Hey everyone, my name is David Rao and I'm the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. You can also find my ideas on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, a variety of other places when you search for my name, David Rao, or Make Moments Matter. I'm sorry I'm a few minutes late. It's been a struggle bus night with technology. I'm trying to get more get more technology involved to make this a little bit easier so y'all can see more, and that has made things more complicated. So I hope that everyone can see and hear me, and if not, I guess you can't really comment because you don't know I'm asking you that, but I hope you can. And if you can't, please let me know in the comments and I'll try and fix some things. Okay, so a couple quick things. Today I'm going to talk about second grade, and I'm going to talk about fifth grade. Second grade, we're going to talk about rhythm reading, Star Wars theme, and how we do a little bit of reading and arranging and challenging each other, and that's going to be very exciting. It's sort of a last minute lesson idea that I had that I wanted to share with y'all in case you wanted to take it, adapt it, use it in your own classroom. I'm also going to talk about fifth grade. We are doing an ORF arrangement, and I want to talk about how you can simplify, add, change, do all sorts of things to that arrangement to make it more interesting for your students, to make it more applicable for your students, and just a couple tips and tricks that I found that work well for me and my kids. Okay, that's coming up. Really quick, if you hear me talk about a book or a resource or something that you're interested in, there's a whole page on my blog devoted to those links and resources and ideas. If you go to just the bottom of wherever you're listening to or watching this video or listening to the podcast, at the bottom there should be a link, direct link to that links page. But if not, you can find it by navigating to my website, makemomentsmatter.org. Click on the video tab and look for the Musical Mondays recap page for this year. And then finally, if you want to join our Facebook group, there's a Facebook group I started a couple years ago called Every Moment Matters, a music education community. Let me say that again. Every Moment Matters, a music education community. And it's a great place where you can get more ideas, bounce ideas off people, leave great comments, get good ideas. I hope that it's helpful. Join us there. Oh, and one more thing. I'm doing a giveaway on my Facebook page today, to February 7th. It ends tomorrow at about 7 p.m. Eastern time or Central time, and that's for a $10 Teachers Pay Teachers giveaway or gift card, because there's a sale starting tomorrow. So there's a Teachers Pay Teachers sale tomorrow, February 8th, and also the following day, Wednesday, February 9th. And you can get up to 20% off, 25% off, I can't remember, a good percentage off any resource in my store if you put in the code FEBSALE22. Wow, I'm really having a hard time talking to FEBSALE22. FEBSALE22. Okay. So if you go, you can sign up and there's a giveaway for a $10 gift card. Wow, there are a lot of things I got to remember to say. Okay, that's it. That's all the details. Let me talk about puppets because I love talking about puppets. So I just want to share. So my first graders were prepping for a show about the zoo. So in my head, anything that's like animal, farm, field, I don't know, anything related to animals, I feel like I can find a way to incorporate that. So one of the things I'm incorporating is Little Bo Peep, and we're going to change it a little bit, but we learn the original version first in class. Eventually it's going to be Little Bo Peep is a zookeeper, and she has trouble finding some animals, and it's going to be a whole thing. But in this version, we're just learning the original poem. And some kids know the poem because there are so many apps nowadays that or YouTube videos that teach a bunch of nursery rhymes. And so some of the kids know this or know a version of it, but it's fun to still teach the story. So the way I teach it, of course, is with a puppet because I have a sheep puppet, so why not include it? Anyway, so this is my sheep, and she comes along to teach the poem. And so I say, I go through this whole spiel about, Little Bo Peep, and she was supposed to take care of the sheep, and her mom was like, watch the sheep, you gotta watch for the sheep. And then, she turns her back for 1 second, and what does the sheep do? It leaves, because the sheep, they just see, they see grass, they see clover, I don't know, they just go for it, and they run off. Okay, so my sheep is corroborating this, nodding her head. Yeah, still nodding. Okay, so anyway, so the sheep they run off, and Bo Peep freaks out because her mom was like, you gotta watch the sheep. So she's like, oh no, my sheep, what do I do? Ah! And is running around town. Did you see the sheep? Did you see the sheep? Where did the sheep go? Have you found the sheep? Has anyone seen the sheep? And then this very wise old person comes up to Bo Peep and says, Bo Peep, chill. The sheep will come back on their own. Don't worry. At the end of the day, they're going to get hungry. They're going to get tired. They're going to want like a warm place to sleep. So just chill, Bo Peep. They'll come home. Which is not true. Sheep won't do that. Sheep, I mean, maybe some well-trained sheep, but sheep are just like, whatever. And they go off. I grew up on a farm and we had sheep and they were not, maybe we had the wrong kind of sheep. I don't know. They did not come back on their own. And then they would get out and didn't know how to get back in the pen. It was a mess. Anyway, but in the story, they do come back. So the sheep act this out, and then we learn the poem. Little Bo Peep has lost her sheep and doesn't know where to find them. Leave them alone and they'll come home, wagging their tails behind them. Now, I love this particular puppet because it has a tail that wags, just very easily. It just flops back and forth. Super cute. Also, then after the poem, like we learn it, we do some actions and some things. And then I say, okay, everyone, if you want to ask the sheep a question, like if you have a question about sheep or you have a question about shepherds or like living outside, you can ask the sheep a question. And so some kids will raise their hand. They'll be like, what is a sheep's favorite food? Or I don't know, whatever. And so my sheep will respond with this. Maa. Oh, that's very interesting. Okay, next question. And then some of first kids are like, what? And so then another kid, where did you go when you were supposed to be with Bo Peep? Where did you run off to? That's a great question, sheep. Perhaps you could answer that. Oh, interesting. That's very interesting. Seems like it would be a fun place to visit. Okay, great. Next question. I just do sheep language, and it's hilarious how the kids react, because some kids are like, what? What? I don't understand what the sheep is saying. Like, some classes go full on like, you need to translate this for us, because they're used to me using puppets that speak English that like can talk to them and respond back to them, which is why they're all about asking the sheep a question. And then some kids are like, oh, I also understand sheep. Oh, yeah, I get it. Yeah. Or like there was one boy who tried to ask the sheep a question in sheep-ese, I guess. Sheep, like, I don't know. And so anyways, it's been hilarious. Sometimes if the kids are getting very upset about it, I will translate. I'll be like, you know what? I speak sheep. I can translate for, but most of the time it's just funny for me. Just like, who wants to ask a question? And the kid asks a question and the sheep just answers it. And doesn't actually answer them. Okay, also, I will say, I love this sheep puppet. I don't think I put it on the links page, but I will put a link if you're interested to this particular sheep. But what I will say is you must be careful, because inside the sheep, there's actually a hidden, like an air bladder, because it will bleat on its own. Right? So, two things to be careful about if you have this sheep or want this sheep. One, if you squeeze it, it will make a sound, right? And the kids will either accept that it is a sheep talking, or they will say the sheep is farting. So just be careful about that. And the second thing is, don't forget that there is the bleat inside the sheep. Maybe one time a couple years ago I forgot, and I was walking around after school and I was like hurrying because I had to get to bus duty or whatever. And I'm just like grabbing books or whatever, and I throw the sheep under my arm, and I have to like, and it does that, and I swear, I almost wet my pants because I was so like a fret. It just surprised me. Anyway, it's a cool sheep. Just be aware. I'll put a link on the links page in case you're interested. It is a Folk Manus brand. You can tell because it's super great detail and fun and lifelike and easy to use. You just put your hand here in the bottom, and you can control its mouth. You could maybe get up there and wiggle one of its ears, but you can't do anything else sort of crazy. Some of their Folk Manus puppets have some other cool little details, but I think that's pretty cool anyway. Okay, one more thing. Last week someone said, hey, so question about, you talked about that, the Note Neighborhood PowerPoint about the notes that flip over so kids can see that. Let me just show that to you really quick. Because I know some people would like to sort of see what that looks like. So I'm just going to quickly show that in Instagram. Let me see if I can just flip you around here. Okay. Great. All right, so... this is a Note Neighborhood PowerPoint. I talked about it last week, but the PowerPoint itself, this is like a practice PowerPoint. So like for every story that I do, there's like an introduction PowerPoint and then there's a practice PowerPoint. And so on this one, they've already met the quarter rest, and this is like the practice version where like they've already like seen the concept, and so this is just practice. So anyway, so they go down to the park, and Todd's going down to the park. He's going to meet Dion at the park. Here comes Dion. They're real excited. Okay, and then they're going to go like feed the ducks. And then guess what? The sassy half note shows up. They try and hide from her, and so they go and they end up in a tree. That's the storyline. Very low on storyline, but it's just there to like get them in a tree so we can do some note reading in a tree. So why are we doing it in a tree? Well, part of the reason is I just did a different locale, right? But also the other part is then we can introduce some fun stuff. So they do a little bit of reading of just quarter notes and quarter notes and eighth note pairs. And then they hear someone above them, rustle, rustle. Oh my gosh, there's someone up in the tree branch above them. Oh my god, it's Ta in his rest disguise. Oh my gosh, there he is. And so he shows up in his rest disguise, which they've already met Ta, the Ta rest. And so then they do a little bit of reading. But one of the cool things about setting it in a tree is that, there's another branch above them. So then they can do 2 lines. They can read 2 lines. And so this is really great for like kindergarten, first grade when you're doing really basic note reading, but it gives a storyline, but it also expands you now to 2 lines or so 8 beats at a time. Then Ta gets adventurous and he jumps up to the second branch and he hangs upside down. This confuses some of my kids at first, but then they sort of see what it looks like and they're okay with it. They figure out what that looks like of the notes upside down. They don't need to know this at this level, but I just want them to be able to identify like that's still a quarter note, that's still a pair of eighth notes. They're just upside down. It doesn't change how you read it. It doesn't change anything else. It just is a different look. And so we read a whole line upside down, then we read 2 lines, the top line being notes upside down, the bottom line being notes stems up. We read through, we talk about sometimes on a staff, notes will be stem up, sometimes they'll be stem down. Either way, you still know what we are. And then at the end, we also talk about, well, you say Ta or you say Ta-dee, or there is a version of these stories with Ta and T-T if you use that language instead. But if you do that, then I also like to talk about the vocabulary words, like the actual terms. And so then we go through and talk about those. And then at that point, that's when I point out to kids like, and here's where you find those in my classroom. Here's what they look like, so we talk about that so they can sort of get that perspective. But I wanted to show that because I talked about it last week and I mentioned it, but I hadn't planned on showing it last week, so I didn't have it pulled up. So I just wanted to make sure that I took a chance to show y'all in case you're interested. And that's the Ta rest, so the quarter rest PowerPoint. And if you get like the set, it has like the intro and that practice page all in one, so you can use both things if you want. I like being able to show kids the upside down note because again, it's like showing them like here's what it could like, here's what it could look like, here's what it could look like. And then I also like to show them like some more stylized notes sometimes, or things that look a little different in case, it's not the exact perfect oval with a stem on it, in case it looks a little different. I want them to sort of see and know what those things are, so that they can identify them in the moment if they need to. Okay, a couple puppet feedback things. How do you store your puppets? I have a puppet tree. You could also, if you don't have a lot of space, if you have like a closet door, they make over door like shoe, like those metal shoe things that have like the inserts into your shoe. So if like you want to store your shoes on a door, puppets fit right onto those. Or you could do the little pocket things. People have done that. You can actually get a shoe organizer, like a stand on Amazon, and I'm pretty sure that's on my. I have like an Amazon. It's an ideas list is what it's called, but it just like is a place for me to pull a bunch of stuff together. But the shoe tree puppets fit right on there, so it's sort of cool. You can use that, and I'm pretty sure that's on my Amazon page, but I'll put a link to that in case anyone's interested. And then what do you do to kids who say it's just a puppet? I generally will do this. So if I'm holding the puppet and he's like, it's just a puppet, I'm like, oh, okay, and I cover its ears. I know it's just a puppet, but she doesn't know that she's a puppet, so if we could just like, and then usually they're like, okay, they'll go along with that if I'm just like, okay, we know she's a puppet, but don't tell her. So that's sort of like, it's silly. Or again, we could be, if the kid is just doing that to try and be disruptive or whatever, you can have a conversation about like, well, we're just trying to have fun, blah blah blah. But usually I make it a game, like, oh well, we know she's a puppet, but and then usually kids will go along with that. That's my number one go-to. If a kid is still just trying to be divisive or just try to derail the lesson, that's a different issue. It's not really about the puppets, it's about something else. And so then I try and handle that in a different way. But that's sort of what I would say, Colleen. And then Nancy, you asked about the Note Neighborhood PowerPoint. Yes, it's on the links page in case you're interested. I will also, if you want, you could send me a message and I could send you a direct link, but it's on that links page I talked about earlier. Okay, let's move on to second grade because I want to talk about Star Wars. So last week, many of us across the United States had a snow day or two, and I knew basically that my school district was going to call a snow day, at least one, because we were like much of the country, it was predicted we would have anywhere from 1 to 47 inches of snow, possibly at some time across the timeline of like 3 days. It was like they didn't know, but they were pretty sure it was going to be a lot of snow. So my school district, we went into the school day knowing this, and I knew that like the bulk of my students would miss a whole lesson cycle. Like they'd miss a whole like half a week basically of lessons. And so there were like a couple stragglers that like would get that lesson. I don't know how to explain this in a way that makes more sense. But I just knew that like there were like 2 or 3 classes that were going to get the new lesson and all the rest of them wouldn't. So I like wanted to save that new lesson for when we came back because I knew that like then I could redo it later. I didn't want to like use it for like one class and then have to like figure something out later. So I was like, fine. So I had basically like 1 second grade class, 1 first grade class, 1 fifth grade class or whatever that I knew I was going to need to like improvise. And so this is what we did with second grade. I had just printed off another set of these rhythmic cards. So I call them rhythm sort cards. And they're just little cards that have a picture and a word and then the rhythm that goes with the picture. So, and these are Star Wars themes. So Star Destroyer, right, has Toddy Toddy. And here's Darth Vader. Okay. And Boba Fett. Okay, so this is what we were going and working with. It's a whole set. It's all based on the rhythmic building bricks that Gunhild Catemon came up with many, many years ago. She was a contemporary of Carl Orff, so this is something that you see a lot in Orff-Schulwerk summer courses or workshops or whatever. You'll see these little pairs of notes. So I have a Star Wars version all based around words from Star Wars, and so you basically take the word, you pull out its rhythm, and then we use it to do all sorts of things. Okay, that's the setup. The PE teacher has this game that he plays with kids like all the time. It's called Star Wars. It has nothing to do with Star Wars. I've asked him about it. He's like, I don't know, it's just a throwing game, but they like weren't excited about it until I started calling it Star Wars, so I just call it Star Wars. I was like, but there's nothing about it that's Star Wars. You don't say like, you must defeat the Death Star if you whatever. He's like, no, I don't do anything like that. Okay, and so anyway, but the kids, it's like I open the door to the gym to like trade classes with the PE teacher, and kids will like look and they'll be like, we're doing Star Wars, and the whole class will like erupt in praise, right? So I was frustrated. I was like, you know what? I like Star Wars too. I've got a Star Wars activity for you, second grade. And they were like, but do you really like Star Wars? I was like, I bet I like Star Wars more than Coach Barnes. And they're like, So I like go over to my desk. I have like an R2-D2 like lunchbox. I have like a BB-8 like little candy dispenser. Like I have all these little trinket things. Here, I even pulled out at home. I have vintage Star Wars picture book. Oh look, an Empire Strikes Back storybook. A second Empire Strikes Back, different version. I'm pretty sure it's a paperback. Maybe. The Star again, full color photograph like vintage old school Star Wars picture books that I'm very proud of. Just like I'm a nerd. 1978. Anyway, so good times. So I am a big Star Wars nerd, and so but the kids are like, I don't think you really like Star. So anyway, so I was like, okay, fine. So I said, I like have this huge setup. I'm gonna need your help to defeat the dark side, because there is a new, like, I had this whole spiel of what we're going to do. Anyway, it's just a rhythmic composing, arranging thing. But for kids, I had this setup. Anyway, let me see if I can show you. I have this cool setup. I'm going to try and see if it works to show you all, so you can sort of see what I'm doing. I have my old phone trying to use it as like an overhead projector. So let's just see if it works. Woohoo! Okay. So you can see this. Let me change you Instagram so you can see it. Okay, I hope you can see that. Cool. All right, so I've got these cards, right? Let me see if I can just show you a couple of them. So like Boba Fett, Luke. Let's see, what else have I got here? Jawa, Stormtrooper. So, okay, Death Star. Okay, so basically what I said to kids was, I gave them a whole set of these cards. I said, you need to come up with a pattern that has 4 characters or 4 items, 4 things in a row. So that's what we did. Let me move this out of the way. So I had them come up with 4 things. And I put them into groups of 2 or 3. So I said each kid can come up with 1 row. Like 1 thing. And if you are being super clever, see if you can do it so that, you know, if you look at the rhythms on here, try not to double up. So like, don't have like Death Star Jawa, because Death Star is ta ta and Jawa is ta ta, right? Or don't do like Lightsaber Stormtrooper, because lightsaber is ta ta-dee, and Stormtrooper is ta-ta-dee. So try not to double up. So this would be a good example of a line. So I've got Death Star, Luke, Boba Fett, Stormtrooper. Okay, so this is a totally fine, absolutely acceptable. And I would also say to kids, if you have ta and rest in your line, maybe see if it can go at the end. Because it's just a little bit more musically satisfying if you do that in the long run. Death Star, Boba Fett, Stormtrooper, Luke. Woohoo! Okay, so then each kid got to come up with like their, they got to come up with their lineup. Okay, so let me make a couple different ones here. So then I got, let's see, R2-D2. I'm gonna even break my rule. R2-D2 Finn, Darth. I don't want to put that. Han Solo, Obi-Wan. Okay, so there's the second row. Let's see. Some of these I had to get a little creative, so let's see if I can find a great example of that. Because I knew that kids would ask if I didn't have certain things in there. So, like, this is an example. Millennium Falcon has way too many sounds. Millennium Falcon is 6 different syllables. I just need just the one thing. So I just put Falcon, and Millennium is like in little letters. But Falcon, they call it the Falcon. It's fine. So I've got Falcon on this card, but I'm going to take that one out. So let's see. Let's do... okay. Kylo Ren, X-Wing Fighter. Let's see. Stormtrooper Ewok. Oh, I've got... Okay, I also have Stormtrooper twice because... Again, this is me being a Star Wars nerd. One is like the everyday Stormtrooper that kids will see, and then one is like the Ranger. And so... So let me change one of those out. Hold on, let's see. Stormtrooper. Well, I'll put lightsaber in there. Okay. All right, so 3 different lines, right? So I've got line 1, line 2, line 3. Okay, all different characters, all different stuff. Ooh, and Star Wars is just full of dudes. Okay, so let me change out. Let's see, where's a Toddy? Oh, I'll put Princess Leia in there. Cool. I also have Rey in here somewhere, but I don't know where she went. Anyway. Oh, there she is. Okay, let's put Rey in here. Sorry, Finn. Bye. Okay, just to make this a little more interesting. All right. So then we would have kids read through. So I would have them read the words first. Death Star, Boba Fett, Stormtrooper, Luke. Okay, and then read the rhythms. Ta, ta, ta-dee, ta, ta, ta-dee, ta. Okay, next line. Do the same thing. Okay, R2-D2, Rey, Han, Solo, Obi-Wan. Ta-dee, ta-dee, ta. Ta, ta-dee, ta-dee, ta. Cool. Last one. Kylo Ren, Princess Leia, lightsaber, Ewok. Ta-dee, ta, ta-dee, ta-dee, ta, ta-dee, ta, ta. Okay. Easy peasy. Great. Then, I'd say we've got 3 lines. So top line we're going to call line A. Second line we're going to call line B. Third line we're going to call line C. And they just did an activity sort of like this, but with food words a couple weeks ago or a couple days ago. So what I would then do is I would say, okay, great. I'm going to give you a form. And I have these big cards with forms that I have printed out. I'd put it up on the board and I'd say, when you read, you have to read A, B, C, A. So if I were going to do that, let me look at my version. If we're going to read A, B, C, A, we'd read this line, A line. We'd read the B line. We'd read the C line. And then we go back and read line A. Or maybe I say, okay, we're going to read, and this is our form, A, B. Woohoo! This top line's going to get boring because we're going to do it so many times. So you read A again, read A third line, and then read B, right? So I'll go through and give them a couple of these different elemental forms. A, B, A, C. You know, they're all different things you could do. And say, you know, you could do that. You could play around. If it gets a little bit boring for kids, then you can say like, okay, great. Oh no, I have terrible news. Whoever did line B, oh no, your line has there's a rebel spy, or I don't know. You could there's a droid that's trying to disrupt your hyperdrive. I don't know. I had some very intricate answers that day. So I'd say, but here's the thing, you gotta mix up your line. Okay, so line B. All right, so then I have to mix it up. I can't use the same order. So let me do that. Rey, R2-D2, Obi-Wan, Han Solo. Don't like that. Let me end with Rey. R2-D2, Obi-Wan, Han Solo, Rey would be ta-dee, 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 ta, ta, ta-dee, ta. Okay, that would work. Ooh, uh-oh, my video died. Hold on, let me turn it back on. Uh-oh, there we go. Okay, so you could go through, you could do that. You could do any line. You could say like, all right, I need you to replace one thing in each line. One thing must go. Choose, you know, you can even be specific. The first thing in every line has to go, or anything. If you have a droid in your line, or if you have a ship in your line, or whatever, it has to go. Okay, so then kids are then making substitutions and changing things based on what you're having them say. Or any word that's a ta-dee-ta word has to change or flip. I mean, there are like infinite possibilities with this. I like using the elemental forms like the A, B, A, C, and the A, B, and the ABCA, like these forms that kids have to read, because then they're forced to maybe read in a different order than they would want. Maybe they're forced to try something new, a different thing, or maybe you say, okay, whatever. If they're getting bored because A shows up a lot, okay, A line is gone, it's destroyed, it's gone. Everything else has to move up. And if I were going to do something like this, I generally have like an overhead, not an overhead projector. I have a document camera like this where I would show this exact thing up on the board. Okay, so that one's gone. So now you have to redo it, but it has to be done as a C or whatever. Okay, so let's see. TIE Fighter, Yoda, Star Destroyer. What am I going to end with? Let's see. What else could I do? BB-8. Cool. Right, so then that's something you could do. You could even give them like a whiteboard if you wanted. So like let's say that I'm going to use a whiteboard and now I have to write down my top line. Okay, so then this is with paper obviously, right? Toddy, 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 talk. So for R2D2 OB1. Sorry, I'm like writing sort of sideways, so I'm sorry if that's sort of hard to see. Okay, Han Solo Rey. You could have them write down the line if they wanted to. You could even have them write down like the character names if you wanted them to. But then this gives kids like a chance. Then you could go through, you could have them keep this, change a thing up here. There are so many different ways you can play around with this, but it was a day where like I just wanted them to explore and arrange and try things and do it in a group, do rhythmic reading. At one point we even busted out some rhythm sticks to read some of these things, but having these cards ready to go made it really easy. So they've done an activity like this with the cards with arranging and rearranging, but it was just with food. This is now just Star Wars themed. They still, by the end of class, didn't believe I was a bigger Star Wars fan than the PE teacher, even though at the moment, that exact moment, I was wearing Star Wars socks. I mean, I'm just real frustrated they didn't believe me. But anyway, whatever, it's fine. I'm over it. I'm totally not gonna hold on to be stressed about the Star Wars thing. Okay, so that's just an activity that I did that sort of worked pretty well and was fun. Kids like it. And again, having the cards, they just enjoy it. They think it's funny, and we had a good time with it. So this is on the links page if you're interested. Yeah, and you can do that. You could do that with food. You could do that with, I have a whole nother set that's instruments. Let me see if I can show that. I have a whole nother set that's like piccolo and concertina and oboe. I'm just pulling sort of randomly. But you could do that same sort of activity, English horn, and then this time you'd be reinforcing not just the rhythms, but also like different instruments, right? So it's sort of another fun sort of a thing that you can do if you want. Okay. Away. Let's talk about 5th grade. So 5th grade, a couple weeks ago, I introduced this book called I Sang You Down from the Stars. It's this beautiful book by Tasha Spillett-Summer and Michaela Goad. And it's just, Michaela Goad, the illustrator, is a Caldecott Award winner for her illustrations. It's a gorgeous book. It's about an Indigenous woman in Canada preparing to have a baby. And throughout the story, she creates a medicine bundle for her baby and sort of talks to the kid. And talks it, in sort of a future. Well, let me look at the words again. No, it's sort of remembering the journey that she had when she was pregnant and preparing for the baby. I was going to say, like, she's talking. It's not into the baby in the future, but it's talking about like here's what happened when we were together and when I was pregnant. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. I read it a couple weeks ago. So since then, we've been preparing and we've been sort of taking this idea of the story and then adding it to an arrangement for Orff instruments. And I wanted to show you sort of how we were doing that so you can adapt and change and do things like this if you're interested. So the Orff arrangement comes from this book called Music for Children. It's by Orff and Capeman. So Carl Orff and Gunhild Capeman, who are the two people sort of behind Orff Schulwerk. If you don't have Orff training, this book is not always super duper helpful because the book itself doesn't have a lot of instructions and the original instructions are in German. And so it's not super helpful if you don't really know what you're trying to get from it. But I'm going to talk a little bit about how I'm using it for this song and sort of what we're doing with it. So the song, I think it's on page 100. Let me just quick check. 109, I think. Nope. 106? Yeah, I'm doing 109 with a different class. It's on page 106. It's number 20. If you just read the song verbatim, if you just tried to prepare it as it was, I don't think it'd be super successful. The song is meant to be, and almost everything in this book is meant for you to take it and change it and add things and rearrange and change the order of how things are introduced or change the order of things or take things out. It's sort of just like, it's like etudes. It's like examples of what you could do. It's not what you must do. It's what you could do. And so this song specifically is one that like could be super fun, but also could be a disaster. This song is like deceptive. You would think it's like, oh, this is going to be so easy, but it's really sort of tricky. So how did we break it down? So when I taught the song, or when I taught the story, we talked about it. I said, really, if you think about like a baby or a newborn, you want the baby to sleep. And how do you do that? Because they cry a lot. Well, sometimes you could use this thing called a lullaby. You can sing to your baby. And so this song is sort of a lullaby. And that's sort of how I introduced the song in general. And the first thing I introduced was this song has two different accompaniment patterns, two different ostinati. Here, I've got my soprano xylophone here. I schlepped it home from school to show you. So it's got two different ostinati. And the first one I did the trickiest one. Let me see if I can show y'all here the visual that I used for it. Of course, I brought this xylophone like in the way before I even... Oh. Okay, let me see if I can show you this. Instagram. We'll see if I can. Ooh, okay. Hopefully y'all can see that. So the visual I used is just a really simple visual. It's just a visual of a xylophone or a metallophone. It depends on what you want to have up there. For this specific slide, the metallophone sort of popped out a little bit easier than rather than the brown bars. I like these silver bars because the black letters pop out a little more easily. This is just clip art. You could have a physical, like a foam or felt or whatever visual up on the board if you wanted. But this one's nice and it's big and it's easy for kids to see. So I had them look for G and A. I had them take off B and then also look for C. So the pattern that they're eventually going to play is sort of tricky. And actually you can do a 3-mallet version. This is a great prime example of a song that was like not necessarily meant for children. It's meant for older kids, or it's meant for kids who have had lots more experience than mine. But the eventual pattern that you could do if you wanted on this song is... That is way too tricky. So for my kids, I realized a big part of this is figuring out how to break it down. Like what are things that you could do to make kids more successful. So what we started off with was just on G and A. Just giving that pattern, just back and forth. And over the course of a couple lessons, we got to the point where we could at least do... Sorry. I'm trying to think of the steps we went through. Now, some kids can do more advanced versions of that. Some kids can even slip in that last part. What I found is that this one, for my classes this year, this particular pattern is way too difficult for them. Or at least it's just the way that it presents is just sort of really tricky. And so I did not stress myself too much with that. I was just like, you know what? We're just going to go on. There's another accompaniment pattern that goes... that one's much easier for my kids. Again, I started with the visual up on the board, and I started with a visual that shows like from G to G. And really, we just tried with all bars on, we tried walking from G to G. Yeah, and I like to say to kids, when I say walk, I mean one bar to the next bar. And I even say if there's a bar missing, if there's a bar off, I'm still going to count that as a walk because it's like literally the next bar. So I'm going to say it's a walk for right now, but anyway, for this particular lesson. So we just did walking from G to G. Great, and then we took off B and F, and we did that walk again. And then I said play it 2 times in a row without stopping. Here we go. Now the song itself, the accompaniment pattern starts on E. The first time I tried to introduce this lesson, I just immediately, the first one was like, let's start on E and do the walking thing. And they were like, we don't get it. So I start out with G to G. I take off F and B. Then I do G to G again. We do it a couple times in a row. We loop it. And then I say, sorry, Instagram, I know you're sort of tilty. Okay, same thing, but this time, what if we looped it and we started but instead of starting the pattern on G, could we start on C? Let's try it. Here we go. One more time, end on C. Right? Okay. And then I say, what if we start the pattern on E? I just find that like when you do this sort of thing, if you start from G to G and just let them loop that a couple times, they get what that feels like. And then they can make the adjustment of do that loop, but start on a different note. C is an easy one for them to start on because it's a set of 3 bars in a row. So I like to start on that and say, okay, that one's next. And then I'll say, but what if we start on E? Weird, let's try it. And that's the final pattern that they're supposed to play. I'm just sort of leading them into how to do it. So then, that's like one whole day of learning those accompaniment patterns. Sometimes maybe 1.5 days, depending on the other stuff that goes into the lessons, but it takes a little bit of time. So then we learn the song. Again, this original version doesn't have words. I added in words that are sort of inspired by the book. And so we sang through, we learned those words, we did that song, and it's just very simple little like stars up in the sky, light up in the sky, bring me a baby with spirit so strong, bring me a baby, I'll sing him your song, stars up in the sky, light up in the sky. It's just sort of simple for my class. I'm not trying to be too fancy about it. You can use those words, change the words, do whatever words you want. It doesn't even have to be related to this book. You can do any sort of words you want because there are literally no words in the volume. So do what you want. But then we sang the song, did it a couple times, got really confident about it. And then I said, okay, here's your challenge. And so then again, I showed them a visual of the bars they were going to play. C, D, E, G, and A on the bottom side of the instrument. We took off F, we took off B. And I said, okay, great, here's the thing. You get to figure out the song. So the first part goes, stars up in the sky, light up in the sky. We start on the letter E. See if you can figure it out. I'm going to give you 1 minute to see if you can figure out that melody. Starting on E, see if you can try it on your own. So then I turn off my microphone, I start walking. And kids, kids are working through, kids are doing stars. Some kids are with stars. They do other things, but they're trying to figure it out. I give them a chance to do it. At one point, I'll say something like, okay, hint, I know up on the visual it says C, D, E, G, and A, but actually we're not using the G and A for this particular part. So if you're using that, leave it off. It's actually not in this melody. Okay. And so we try it. We eventually learn it goes. Right? And so then the tricky part then is how do you get them to hold and to accept rests? How do you get them to figure out where to do that? I always say like, stars 2, 3 up in the sky, light 2, 3 up in the sky. I'm even do Stars 2, 3 up in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Light 2, 3 up in the sky. You know, just sort of get them to accept those. Well, they're not really rests; they're held notes, but you can't really. I guess you go stars up in the sky. But I'm not going to do that with my fifth graders, and we don't really have enough glockenspiels or metallophones at this point to just transfer it to that. I want all kids to experience this and learn it, and then eventually we'll put it on like a glockenspiel or something that rings a little longer so that it fills in that space. Anyway, for the second part of the song, bum 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 ba da 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 da, I say, okay, I'm going to let you figure out again. Now, here's where you are going to use the high G and the high A. So you've got C, D, E, G, and A. Now, I'm going to let you figure out the melody, but I'm going to give you 3 hints. Here are the 3 hints. Okay, the first hint is, in this melody, I know I'm telling you where you're going to use C, D, E, G, or A. Those are the bars we can use. First hint, we actually won't use one of the bars in this melody. See if you can figure out which one that is. I'll say also, you know, I said steps are when you're moving from one bar to the very next bar. And I know there's a break right here between E and G, but I'm gonna count G to E right now as a step. I know it's sort of a skip, but I'm gonna count it as a step. So, because really we are skipping over F, but I'm gonna say that that's a step right now. Assuming that's a step, there's only one leap in this melody, only one jump in this melody. So there's a bar we don't use, there's only one leap, and the last hint is it starts on G. You get 1 minute, go for it. So kids are like, okay, bring me down, a lot of my kids will do bring me they'll figure it out, but they'll leave out bring, and so I'll say, okay, sing the words, bring me a baby, bring me a baby. So we use those words to sort of figure out where things go and how those parts go together. So then they eventually figure out that the melody goes. Great. The next one goes bum 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 ba da 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 da. Same or different? It's the same. Okay, so if you figured out that melody, then that, you know, that's just the first part of that melody and the second are the exact same. So really you just repeat yourself. Okay, so we go through and we learn all those things sort of together. And I give them those hints of like, I'm going to let you figure out the melody. I found this to be so powerful because kids, one, want to play. They want to try it. They want to try and figure it out. It's fun for them. It's a challenge. It also gives them a chance to slow down, to work through things that are maybe causing them trouble. So it like, when I first started doing this, it like hurt my teacher instinct to like just let them go and let them try. But it's really not just like letting them go. It's like within parameters. I'm saying, here's the song you already know. Here are the bars we're using. Figure it out. That's not just like a free for all. I mean, it's going to get a little loud, but it's like a, here's your challenge. Here's your scaffolding. Go. And so many of my kids were successful. Again, along the way, as they were going, I would go and check in with certain kids. There were some kids who just really had struggles because of, you know, dexterity, or because they just weren't hearing the pattern, or maybe they weren't as familiar with the song, hadn't done it enough times. There are all sorts of reasons that kids cannot get it, right? That for some reason it just does not sync. And that's fine. I just need to go in and figure out what scaffold, what reinforcement do I need to give them to make them more successful. And so along the way, there are some kids who I would need to go and say like, okay, sing the words. Okay, now apply that, you know, and sometimes the words help kids get back on track. That's why I always have a set of words for an ostinato or a melody or whatever. I always have some sort of word that goes along with it, so that helps bring them back on track. Some kids have trouble with repeating notes. Some kids have trouble just with, or we'll get it, but we'll do it all with one hand. Which, okay, cool, but now can you do it with two? Okay, you figured it out, great, that was my challenge. Now can you figure out how to play it with two hands instead of just one? Ooh, okay, let's, you know, or, you know, all sorts of different challenges you find. Let me think of another one that kids were dealing with today. One kid was adamant. They really liked that for the second time. He's like, but it sounds great. I was like, it does sound great. but you didn't write this song. Save that for the save it for the next one. It's very cool. It's wonderful, but save it for the next one because it's not your song. It's someone else's song. So eventually what's going to happen is we're going to put it together. So we're going to have the accompaniment part. We're actually going to slow it down because it's a lullaby. So the slower part. So some kids will be tasked to play this. Probably nobody's going to be tasked to play. Or even a simplified version. Or the problem with this is some kids can get this, but then this gets really boring. This back and forth, that's tricky. That's hard for a lot of my kids, but it gets sort of boring. So I don't know if I'll put kids on that or if I'll just let that be my part. Just leave that out completely. It doesn't need to be there. One other thing I do add, I did not schlep home. My contrabass bar, the C, I'll play that all the time at like a pedal point or a point where they sort of brings everyone back together, a nice strong beat, so that helps keep them sort of together. Having that huge bar is really helpful. If you don't have that, you could play a lower tone on a piano. You could play, like, if you have a tone chime, you might be able to play that. There are all sorts of things you can do in place of the contrabass bar if you don't have it. But I eventually we will have kids break up and do different parts. We'll put the whole story together and make sort of an arrangement out of it. Again, it's not going to sound exactly like it does in the volume because, well, it's not supposed to. It's not supposed to be exactly what you see there in those, like, 20 bars or whatever, done the end. This is like something you can pull and change and whatever. Maybe we'll have one time through, instead of playing the melody, we sing it. If it were non-COVID times, I would say let's pull out our recorders and play that part. So there are a lot of things you can do. The next thing that I'm going to add in the next lesson is I'm going to give kids a chance to improvise. So again, I'm going to give them, I might give them a text, or I could just give them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Try and do that together and see what you can come up with. And I found that when I gave kids a chance to try and figure out the melody, they were already coming up with parts that are like, this is fun, but I want to change this one little thing. Or this is fun, but what if we did this other thing? So it's fun. They like that idea. But this is a great challenge for them too, because they've improvised before already in 4. This is now having them improvise in 6. It changes it just a little bit. Again, the texture and the story of the song being a lullaby and not a faster song, that's another challenge for them added on top. So it's just a fun song to give them a little bit more to think about, work on, and just bring to life in their own way. So eventually it'll be, maybe we'll read the story and use that as inspiration. And then maybe have a mixture of singing, playing, accompaniment, all different parts. Improvisation in there too, again with kids playing on different parts. That's the eventual goal, but this is a fun one to use, and it does challenge them along the way. Again, you don't have to do what's printed in the book. You could, and you don't have to do it all in one lesson. What's happened at this point, what I'm at today, I've taken 4-5 days to get there, and I don't try and shove it all in at once. It's like trying to figure out what can you do in one day that'll be successful, that they'll be able to build on in the next class. It's just scaffolding over time. It's days like this that I'm like, I wish I were back to 45-minute classes, because you could get so much further in arrangement. At this point, it's like, get out the instruments, take off bars, get prepared, what do you remember, blah, 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 blah. And it just takes a lot of time. It's a lot of logistical time. And so trying to shave down those things will make those logistical things will make this whole process a little easier. But I wish I had 45-minute lessons, because you can get so much more done. You can do so much more. Anyway, I would also just challenge and encourage you to give kids a chance to try parts out, to try and figure out melodies. Give them those scaffolds, but also just give them a chance to practice. If there's a particularly difficult part, don't be like, here, we're just going to do it all together again. Let them do it at their own speed, or let them stop and reset a couple times. Because when I'm in a workshop, I want that. I want the ability to stop and sort of play it through on my own to figure it out in my head, or get my chance to practice. When I give kids a chance to practice or figure out melodies, I am floating through and trying to help kids, especially kids who either ask for help or I can tell need a little help. But giving them those chances to practice or to figure out the melody or whatever, it's really, really helpful for them, really beneficial. Okay, I'm out of time. But I hope this gave you a couple ideas. I hope you're inspired by Star Wars. And also this really great book, I Sent You Down from the Stars. Super great content, super fun to work with. I hope it gave you a couple ideas along the way. I will see you all next week, but don't forget, I'm doing a gift card giveaway tonight, Monday night, the 7th, through tomorrow, because there's a Teachers Pay Teachers sale starting tomorrow, February 8th, running the 8th and the 9th. But you can join that giveaway on my Facebook page to win a $10 gift card. And then there are other sellers who are also doing that, who are linked up to me. You can win you have multiple options to win. But that's all right now. If you're listening on the podcast, go right now. But you can get that opportunity. So anyway, if you shop the TPT sale, cool. If not, I will see you all next week. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good night.